Do you realize how much news there actually is in a news cycle in a week? There are so many things. Is that my audio playing? There are so many things to keep up with that it's just really unreal. And on top of that, what you are keeping up with, how do you know that what you're keeping up with is actually anything relevant? How do you know that what the cycle has you on is relevant? Is it true? Or is it something that they have actually put out in front of you to get your attention? I mean, look at this shot right here. If I was a Spanish bull, all I'd be saying is, let's chase that. So I hope that's shut down. Whatever audio y'all are playing. Okay. You see all that red? I say, if we were in Spain, we'd be chasing that, running with the bulls. Is that not waving a red something in front of you to get your attention? And what is it? Arkansas transgender law makes it America's worst state for trans kids. Can I tell you that it is so difficult to weed your way through this stuff in order to find out really what is taking place? And that's what we're trying to do tonight. We're basically trying to figure out what is it that they've got going on in the news cycle, and what is it that is really relevant. Now, but what is relevant? Everybody is on civil rights. All you have to do is put up civil rights, and you are playing a card. Is everything civil rights when you really get down to it? What do you have here? You have a baseball field, and you've got at the top fair play. And so, you know, I started the show with the Arkansas governor and transgender. You have a website that's basically saying the importance of sports participation for transgender youth. Fair play. Wait a minute. These are too many hot topics, hot points, all at the same time. Everybody's all up into sports. They're always talking about fair play in sports. You got all these different things that are happening behind the scenes. College football, the players don't get paid, but they're always trying to do things for them. You know they're getting stuff done. There's all kinds of money changing. So this is a hot spot. Sports, hot spot. Civil rights, hot topic. Fair play, hot topic. And then transgender. All of that mixed up, and who in the world is going to be able to get through this? Now, here's what I'm basically going to show you. This is really, it's too difficult. When you hear it, you're not going to know who is who in this video. Take a listen, and we'll start like this. This is Missouri. They got the same stuff going on in Missouri that they've got it going on in Arkansas. Take a listen.
I came here today as a parent to share my story. I need you to understand that this language, if it becomes law, will have real effects on real people. It will affect my daughter. It will mean she cannot play on the girls' volleyball team or dance squad.
Wait a minute. Let's back up here. He says that this bill, this Missouri bill, will affect his daughter in volleyball. Now, here's the thing that I'm basically trying to figure out. How is this bill going to affect his daughter in volleyball when, in fact, his daughter is a boy? So, what bill are we talking about? Keep listening.
Squad or tennis team. It will mean she will not have the opportunity that all of us had to be part of a team.
Now, I do not remember boys actually being a part of a girls' team. And so that's what, when he's saying this, it sounds like that somebody is doing something where they're violating his child's civil rights. But what he's really talking about is something altogether different. Somehow or other, this man has allowed his child, to convince him that he is in the wrong body. Now you might say, I didn't get that. Well, let's play it again, because it is, like I say, there is a lot going on here, and there's a lot more behind the scenes.
I need you to understand that this language, if it becomes law, will have real effects on real people. It will affect my daughter. It will mean she cannot play on the girls' volleyball team or dance squad or tennis team. It will mean she will not have the opportunity that all of us had to be part of a team.
So how did Missouri lawmakers respond to that heartfelt plea from Brandon Boulware against a bill that would ban sports with their friends?
So, okay, wait a minute. This is basically about playing sports with your friends. Somebody is violating his child's right to be with their friends. But what is actually taking place here is something else is going on, because you know that couldn't be the case in America. There's no way that we would be putting up with a civil rights violation like that. You're somehow or other exempting his child from the regular sports, and you might say, well, that is, listen, something is going on here that's not meeting the eye. My kids were not even in public school, but yet American government fixed it so that they could play sports. If I had wanted them to play sports, they could have played sports. Like, they would extend them an opportunity, an invitation, because you can't get away with excluding them just because they don't happen to be in the regular public school system. Because, buddy, I'm paying land taxes. So we would have had to go through a few hoops or whatever, but still, this is America, and you would have been included. So what is going on? So you basically start pulling back, and it says the bill's justification largely rely on scare tactics, stereotypes, unwarranted claims that transgender women have a psychological advantage over cisgender women, despite a complete lack of evidence that transgender sports participation has had any measurable impact on the success of cisgender athletes. Now, y'all get this. Just let's slow it down and let's look at some of the key and their hot buttons. Despite a complete lack of evidence. What evidence are we talking about anyway? Where are you going to get this evidence? The bill's justification largely rely on scare tactics, stereotypes, and unwarranted claims that transgender women have a physiological advantage over cisgender women. Now, if you're at home, you're probably saying, who are we talking about here anyway? I have to get a politically correct dictionary out and figure out who we're talking about, because you're saying a transgender woman has an advantage over cisgender women. Basically, I think all this language is built in order to keep you from understanding what's going on, but it's really not that difficult. They have several different names for individuals that have accepted what the doctor said when they came on the scene. You know, basically, you have everybody seen a birth by this point, surely. How many movies have actually included childbirths in the last 30 years? Once it hit the scene, then all of a sudden you're seeing it. And so what happens? The baby is born, and the baby's either crying or it's not crying, and the doctor gives it a whack on the hiney, 2 maybe, and next thing you know, the baby starts crying. And so then this evil individual, the doctor, and I grew up watching Dr. Wellaby, and probably none of y'all have ever heard of any of these old whatever, but the doctor used to have such a fine place in society. He told the parents, well, and probably they already had seen it anyway, because you have a sonogram and you have a party saying which gender it is. So in the sonogram, you're basically able to see a little something that tells you, if the baby moves around, what gender it is. Well, that doesn't count anymore, because that's them telling you what to assign on the birth certificate to say that this is a male or a female. Well, who is this doctor? And are you seeing what I'm saying about the hot button? Complete lack of evidence. Well, Johnny, that is in a sentence that is talking about them having an advantage over the regular women. When I say regular women, I'm not trying to pick at anybody. I'm just basically making sure those of you who are not seeing what's going on here can stay up. Cisgender simply just means you're satisfied with what the doctor said about you when you were born and what's on your birth certificate. So now let's back up. The bill's justifications largely rely on scare tactics. So who's scaring whom? Well, sports is going to be messed up if that's basically, just stay with it. If you actually allow boys that have decided that they're girls to be on the girls volleyball team, then it's possible that, since we all know that males generally have girls in sports, why do we have girl sports in the first place and boy sports? Because girls generally cannot keep up with the male anatomy, the features that we come with naturally. Now, we all know, I don't want to get into it with some very healthy woman who actually is offended because I'm saying that she can't keep up with me on track, or what, you know, if we're running track or whatever. Everybody knows that there are some individuals that don't fit the mold exactly, but everybody else knows also that when you look at the people in the armed forces, you don't see women wearing that big humongous pack, and when they're taking their runs, everybody knows that. So let's don't all get sensitive all of a sudden. But see how this is working? Well, it's going to mess up, and people are very serious about their sports, about whether or not our team's going to win, and then you find out all of a sudden that it was a guy that was playing on the girls' team, and so that's what this guy's doing. And he's saying that it's unwarranted that transgender women have a physiological advantage over cisgender women. Are you ready? Despite the complete lack of evidence that transgender sports participation has had any measurable impact on the success of cisgender athletes. Can I ask you something? If the person is parading as a girl and you didn't even know it was a girl, then how do you know that there has not been any impact? Because number one, you haven't been able to actually point out who's doing this. That's the whole big problem, in part, is individuals are making these swaps, and I am not talking about all of the surgeries. We're not even talking about that part yet. We're talking about individuals that are able to make themselves, but just because of the way they happen to be packaged, boys, they still are able to function at a different level. And so, number two, who has done the studies? It says without any complete lack of evidence that transgender sports participation has had any measurable impact. Who has been measuring this? You see what we're talking about? Now, here we go. You basically have this guy, let's hear him again, as you have this all packaged now.
I came here today as a parent to share my story.
Share your story. What story is that? The first thing you need to share with us is, why is it that your boy wants to be a girl? Oh, I'm just saying, isn't that a part of what's going on? And why is it that the media is playing this? Anyway, why does this webpage, Washington Post, have this? Number one. Number two, why is whatever NBC, MSNBC, why are they covering it? What is so, like when you talk about, you know, people, they do everything they can to get media attention. I'm saying regular people. People are trying to get their advertisements out there. There's just all kinds of stuff going on, and you just really need to ask yourself the question, why did this get coverage? Did I actually miss something? How is it that all these media outlets are playing this, and what is going on with this that makes it so important? Look, notice this. Policies known as transgender sports bans, which ban transgender students from participating and competing on sports teams in accordance with their gender identity, or make it difficult for them to do so, can do substantial harm to mental health well-being and lives of transgender youth, athletes, and non-athletes alike. Are you trying to get into if you're trying to get into our show. I don't watch the phone all that close. So if I don't pick it up, then you can go ahead and call back. I'll try to pay attention to it. I'm trying to pay attention to this more. Now, you see what we just did? We got a group over here that's claiming, well, it hasn't hurt the sport and there's no evidence. Well, is anybody gathering evidence? Does anybody know who individuals are? And you got the parents pulling for them. So basically, if you get into this story, you'll find out that these individuals were dressing their boys up. The boy would have to try to look like a girl. And then how long had that been going on before anybody let on, the different kinds of things that they're able to do? So they're saying complete lack of evidence. And then you start hearing this other side. Policies, you talk about a scare tactic. They're talking about right here that people are saying, well, it's going to mess up the sport. And we're all about our sports. And we want our kids, if they win the pennant, we want it to be fair and square. And the other team over there doesn't have any boys that's dressed up like a girl playing on their volleyball. And so you're going to mess up the whole thing. You don't really know. That's a tactic. That's what they're saying. It's a scare tactic. Okay. Over here on the other side, policies known as transgender sports bans, which bans transgender students from participating or competing on sports team in accordance with their gender identity, or make it difficult for them to do so, here we go, can do substantial harm to the mental health, well-being, and lives of transgender youth, athletes, and non-athletes alike. Wait a minute. How are non-athletes being hurt by policies that make it difficult for the transgender individuals to cross over? How are non-athletes being affected? And where is the study that actually says substantial harm to the mental health and well-being and lives of these people that we're hearing their story? Now listen, y'all, I am not trying to be in any way facetious. I am not trying to be less than insensitive. I'm not making fun of this guy, but I'm just saying, is this real? Is he an actor? And how is it that all these people are gathered together here at the state level, and MSNBC is covering this, and it is just all over the place? Arkansas State, the worst state in the union for transgender. Mississippi just got in on it. Now listen to it again.
I need you to understand that this language, if it becomes law, will have real effects on real people. It will affect my daughter. It will meet.
Now wait a minute. So his son is playing on the girls' team. Is that not going to affect the other girls? Excuse me, did I say other girls? Is not his son, who in his mind, whatever he's doing, however it is he's working it out at this particular juncture, he is wanting to be with the girls. Now, if you want to talk about a scare tactic, is it possible that he's wanting to be with the girls so that he can actually be with the girls? I am not necessarily talking sex here at all. I'm just saying all of us who grew up knowing somebody that was actually a homosexual, back in my time frame, it wasn't always known. It was a suspicion that you had. And it wasn't like anybody I was not in any bullying activity associated with that kind of thing. I just basically knew there were people on our block, and for some reason the girls let this dude come over. And a lot of times you would end up seeing this individual, that individual, and they would actually be yakking it up with the girls or whatever. And it's just like, hey, they sure are getting a lot of girl time. And so, is it possible that this guy is wanting to be on the girls, with the girls for other reasons other than he is just really wanting to play girl volleyball? And is this not going to affect them? Is it just taken for granted? I mean, we only have just a tiny % of individuals that are involved in this anyway. And how is it that tiny % gets to have, look at what was our heading? Fair play, Why is it that that tiny percent gets to disrupt everybody else's life, and this guy wants us to hear his story about how his son is not getting accepted on the girls' volleyball? And you're hearing all of this rhetoric, you're seeing this rhetoric, and you're even having the mental health department being brought in. Who is that? The APA? Does the American Psychiatric Association have any mental health statistics that would show that people's lives are being ruined if they don't get to be, a boy doesn't get to be a girl during his high school years or during his time frame in middle school? All I'm seeing from the DSM, the diagnostic manual, all I am seeing is them switching their positions. Everything they used to say that was actually a mental disorder is nowadays okay, and it needs to get, what does it need to get? You remember what I said when we started? We had a very big red website up, and it was out there where you could see the governor, and he's being called the state's being called the most hated state in the union for transgender. Did it get your attention? What is this really about? Then you have a government study, transgender population size in the United States. Now wait just a minute. I think I made a connection here. So the mental health community has gotten in this, and the mental health community has basically switched their position in regard to whether this is a disorder or not. Now, let's think about it. You're sitting at home, and if you're, let's try to figure out an age group where this is like okay. So I'm just going to try to think back, and I would think, okay, well, let's look at this dude. This dude looks like he is, I'm going to say that he is likely in his late 30s. I just cannot believe that he's 40 years old. I could be wrong. Let's listen to his voice a little bit more.
Parent, to share my story, I need you to understand that this language, if it becomes law, will have real effects on real people. It will affect my daughter. It will mean she cannot play on the girls' volleyball team or dance squad or tennis team. It will mean she will not have the opportunity that all of us had to be part of a team.
Okay, now if she gets to do that, if he gets to do that, I barely can even keep myself from wondering all of the different other things, other individuals or other ploys, and are there not, there's not anybody that's having a problem with this and saying, wait just a minute, dude, you're not the only person. And when we talk about the percentage, and you say, well, who's talking about the percentage? Listen, if the mental health department is in it, if the APA is ruling on this, then listen, y'all, there's something else involved. Well, so here's a government study, 2017, trans population, the size. Now notice this, I'm still quoting from the website. Healthcare coverage. Knowledge of the transgender population size can support the development of social policy that aims to protect transgender individuals against stigma and discrimination. Social policies are going to have to be arranged. Well, that is actually a department, is it not, in our government? From a health perspective, knowledge of the size of the transgender population can inform the development of healthcare programs to benefit transgender people, as well as inform insurance companies on how to best provide coverage for such care. I just tell you, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't get my feet down in the rabbit hole, like when you're looking down the rabbit hole and you start down the rabbit hole, if you all know what I mean. I start backing up about the time when claustrophobia would kick in on most people, like when my head and it's dark up in there. I just don't go too far in a conspiracy theory. It seems like it's as plain as day. There is a time, wait a minute. Now listen, y'all, this is the point at which you really ought to start saying, you know, what is going on in our country? we really have all of this going on, and you just got through reading, you just got through having it highlighted right in front of you. Population can perform the development of health care. Now, I am not saying that transgender people are not real people, but I am saying that I can see what's going on here. Can you say lobby? Individuals will start lobbying the government to make changes in our laws so that doctors can do certain things that they couldn't do before, and insurance is going to be involved. How on to inform insurance companies on how to best provide coverage for such care. It looks like to me that several different entities are looking into this, and it looks like a money-making event if you can get the numbers. Notice, there's our red flag again. Arkansas transgender laws makes it America's worst state for trans kids. Worse in what manner, y'all? Listen to this.
Claims it's about acceptance, not indoctrination.
Ideas to teach trans kids, and there are trans parents and gay parents in our society, and everybody's wanted and desired. After all, that's what our human rights code says, and it's the role of schools to teach the following of our laws, right? Wanted and desired. After all, that's what our human rights code says, and it's the role of schools to teach the following of our laws, right? Wanted and desired. After all, that's what our human rights code says, and it's the role of schools to teach the following of our laws, right?
That's the role of school? I thought school was for educating our kids so that they could actually make a living. They would be individuals who could function in society, educated, but it sounds like to me that he just told us what's really going on in the public school system, that it's their job to teach them how to follow the laws. Really? This is Canada, by the way. You know, it has not been really that long ago when around here they had real cases of individuals that were seeing folk in the wrong bathrooms. And I mean, how long ago was it when Target came out that they were going to participate in all this? And it's a very, very confusing time frame. And we went from all of that, and see, it was not about the bathrooms, y'all. See what? Can you not realize, really, if you really want to get down to it, if these folk, different folk, and you're saying to me, probably somebody's saying, you're calling them folk. Listen, do you realize how many names they have for themselves? They won't be satisfied unless you say this or that. And so if I'm just saying folk because I don't know what else to do. And I really don't think folk is a bad, it doesn't even have gender in it. Folk is gender neutral. Is there anything wrong with saying folk? So here's the question again. These folk have been changed. They've changed their clothes, changed their hair, changed the way they talk. Do they have medical help? Well, they're wanting medical help because they're wanting to actually make it even more likely that they're going to be able to get inside of the room or the atmosphere that they are trying to get in. And so really and truly, here's the question. The whole Target and bathroom stuff, I just never really bought that all that was about that. Now I'm really seeing in my mind what it is about. Let's listen to a couple more.
The other one would strip doctors of their license if they help trans youth, like teenager Samantha DiMichele, get hormone therapy or gender affirmation surgery.
For the past 4 years of my life, I've been using Lupron to suppress my male hormones every 3 months, and I get a needle the size of my index finger injected into my left arm while my right hand squeezes the life out of my dad's hand. Without it, I'd be standing here and I'd probably have things like facial hair, a deeper voice, and things like an Adam apple.
Things like an Adam apple? Do you hear what's going on here? I've never heard of that drug. I'm not even going to catch up on that drug, but I caught what's going on. in the lead up, you hear what's being said. We're talking about passing laws that would strip doctors of their license. And who are these doctors helping? Helping is a real question. How do you know at this age what you really want to be? I mean, one of the biggest questions that young people have that they have trouble with is adults saying, you know, one of your relatives comes over that you haven't seen in a while, and they realize that you're getting older, maybe you're 13 or 14, and you say to the teenager, I'm really saying you're going to end up having all kinds of issues associated with all the names once you start seeing them. You say, well, have you decided what you want to be in life? I haven't even decided who I want to be, much less what I want to be. Now, that's not what they say, but we all know that is a hard question for youth. It always has been. A lot of times you have a parent that is pressing. Me, I never pressed my boys, not ever, to be a preacher, to do what I do. In any kind of way. If they wanted to be involved in some of the things that I did for fun, that's great. If they wanted to stay at home, that was fine. Same thing with my daughter. We basically had some rules that we had to live by, that we determined to live by. I wanted them to make the decision to be a Christian. And you heard me say, I want them to make the decision to be a Christian. My kids were not baptized when they were little kids. They were not coming in and telling me, Dad, we want to be whatever they would say. I'm saying, my children were allowed to make an adult decision when they were at that level. So, you see what I'm saying? Parents get all involved in all this kind of stuff, and you're asking a young person what they want to be, and you then have this young person, whether or not they're being pressured by, who would pressure somebody like that?
Now, what type of show was this? Oh, this was on CBN, or Christian Broadcasting Network. You know, everybody knows CBN. They've been a staple, or a steeple, if you will, in our community. That's where I get most of my facts. Well, I mean, okay, it goes like Fox and Friends, CBN. Do you know any other conservative media? Trump's Twitter. The way I found out I was on CBN was because someone shared a Facebook video with me that received, wait for it, not 500,000 views, not 1 million views, but 1.4 million views. How do you...
What? I could actually find myself in a situation where I had 1.4 million views. Most views, it's just difficult for me, y'all. This is a girl. She has already had a surgery. She has videos where shirt's off, you're basically looking at a dude. And so, 1.4 million views. You've got a lot of attention. You're a teenager. You've got a teenager. The teenager isn't happy in their skin the way they are. Do not tell me, I raised children. I know that this is how this goes. Children had friends. We have other friends that have children. You know how this goes. Some parents just give in to everything that their children want, and they just can't stand to see their children unhappy. I didn't like to see my children unhappy. But somebody's got to basically be at the point here and say, you know, if you do this, there's going to be some consequences, and what if you want to change back? What if you decide you want an Adam apple? Listen again.
The other one would strip doctors of their license if they help trans youth, like teenager.
Why would a doctor want to help trans youth? Why do you think a doctor wants to help a trans youth? What are doctors basically in business for? Well, if the population is of a high enough volume, let's see how many different entities, we can get into this. Knowledge of transgender population size can support the development of social policy. What are we talking about? Social policy? If you make this just might as well go back here and look at this. If you make this so adorable and acceptable, you're going to have an entire voting block. You're going to have communities. You're going to have all kinds of things associated. This is a girl. She calls herself gender queer. That's how she likes to be addressed. She doesn't want to have the assignment of gender that was on her birth certificate, unless she's probably already had it changed. I know that she's 21, possibly older. And so she doesn't really want to be called she either. She has several videos where she talks about somebody mistaking her for a boy, and then she starts talking whatever, and they're, oh, I'm sorry, miss. And she just flips out because they identify her as a girl, miss, and the persons are trying to be respectful because, part of the society has been taught that a certain segment of society should be given a higher level of respect when they are in the audience. I don't know how in the world that got bad. I know that you got dads that are wanting their boys to actually get into the girl side and to participate in their sports functions. So I don't see how I could be a bad person if I taught my sons to be more respectful, or for sure show respect and regard for the female community. Am I bad because I did that? And this other dad that wants to tell you the story about his boy that wants to be a girl and wants to be on the volleyball team too? I mean, how in the world do you get a leg up on the team anyway? And so now you basically have a social policies that we're going through the legislature and fighting over, and you've got the governor, or at least the legislature, the governor vetoed his own lawmakers' decision not to let the doctors go along with this, not to let the healthcare community go along with this. He vetoed it, and then they actually went over his head and passed it anyway. So you got them vilified, and whether you think it's villainy or not, I don't care really about who's thinking on what side. The thing is, that is a vilifying headline. Arkansas transgender law will make it America's worst state for trans kids. How many kids are we talking about? And so what we basically need to do is we need to have another study to figure out how many are in the population and why is that happening. Can you say lobby? Y'all, this is nothing to do with what we are looking at. It's not about civil rights. It's not about sports. This really, all of these news agencies and people that have convened to get in on the lawmaking and the restructuring, I just don't really think it is about what all of them are trying to portray, the dad and his story and the unhappiness of his boy that for some reason wants to be on the girls' team, vice versa. The other boy that is trying to, I don't know what that other boy was up to. That's just part of the story. But then you see in these .gov, this is .gov, they're basically looking this over from what we really ought to be able to see. We ought to be able to see that development of healthcare programs to benefit transgender people, as well as inform insurance companies as how best to provide coverage for them. If the insurance company is going to pay, then the doctor needs to play. See, he's just like them in the sense that the boys want to play on the girls' team. Well, the insurance company is going to put money in it, then the doctor wants to be involved in it. But it's actually against the law right now for him to do something like this. And so the young people can't make these decisions, can they? Well, now you're actually having a lot of back and forth about whether or not parents can actually make a decision, like actually sign the consent form for their teenagers to make these decisions to have themselves changed to some degree or not. Okay. Now, are we getting this? I'm saying, y'all, at some point, I don't really think sanity is ever going to reel us in. It's going to be insanity that ends up being the answer. Sanity, people, us wishing for people. Here's where we are in America. Let's drop down. This is Romans chapter 1. I didn't write this. I'm just telling you, once you start doing things that are unnatural, and we're actually fighting over whether or not a boy can be girl enough to get accepted on the volleyball team, and I know that's not natural. And so this ends up being a description that somebody out there, do you believe that there is anybody that's behind creating all of this? Is there an intelligent designer out there? People don't like to hear God. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, what ends up happening? God gave them over to a reprobate mind. It used to be in American education, in school, you would be just overwhelmed if you would go back to the 1800s, individuals that studied Latin and Greek. And you would, if you really got into the medical profession and the law profession, you would see Latin and Greek still being used. Words that you just like, what in the world? Why don't they speak English? It's because these are some precise languages. And so let's just see what the mental health, what's the American Psychiatric Association going to say about your mind when you start doing unnatural things? Well, it just depends. It depends on whether or not we're going to naturalize it. That's pretty much what they do on a regular basis. They change their diagnostic manual on a regular basis, and things they used to say were unnatural and were a disorder, they wouldn't dare say that today. So what is this business about a reprobate mind? Look at this. Unapproved, rejected, by implication, worthless, literally or morally, cast away, rejected, reprobate. So you're basically saying the maker of this natural, we're saying the maker of nature, the person who put all of this together and made it so that it would work in a cohesive way. Doctors were following rules where they looked and they could tell what to assign this child as. It really wasn't their job. It was just a natural thing. You knew what gender this person was, and it wasn't really the doctor that did the assigning. I mean, as soon as you go and see the baby for the first time, you don't need a doctor. Who in the world needs a doctor to tell whether it's a male or a female? I mean, moms can pretty much figure that out by themselves. So it really wasn't the evil doctor that did all that. So what's happening? People have basically lost their mind. They end up doing those things which are not convenient, being filled with awe. And then it just goes through a litany of things that they end up doing on a regular basis, like they're full up with all of this activity. Now, listen, y'all, we haven't even started. We haven't even touched the sex part of it. Well, you're talking about sexual orientation. I am not talking about sexual orientation right now. We've been talking about gender, and you might say, wait a minute. Let's just see if I can get this. Let me see. You might actually be thinking, okay, Johnny, you do not know the difference between, that's going to be third from the bottom. All right.
Understanding. Someone's sex and someone's gender are different things. Sex is biological. Sex and someone's gender are different things. Sex is biological and determined by physical characteristics. Gender is a social construct, and not every culture defines gender the same way. For example, in Navajo culture, there are 4...
Wait a minute. Are you hearing this? This is the Washington Post, and we're going to use the Navajo Nation as a construct, an example. You need to hear that again. Boy, talk about some evidence. If I ever see I'll let you listen to the rest of that.
Or genders. This is Chase Strangio. He's an attorney at the Understanding. Someone's sex and someone's gender are different things. Sex is biological and determined by physical characteristics. Gender is a social construct. Gender is a social construct.
Okay. Gender is a social construct. Don't let me lose that. Now, social construct. Knowledge of transgender population size can support the development of social policy. Now, you're basically needing some proof about right now, and so you're listening to a website, the Washington Post, a video that has a transgender person doing the talking, telling us the difference between sex and gender. You're probably looking at me a while ago and saying, this is all about sex. I have not started talking about sex. We're talking about gender right now. And you've got your own experts here saying that this is a social construct. And you've got a .gov website saying social policy has to be developed as a result of this social construct. Well, how do you prove this social construct? How do you prove that gender is something that is actually a result of social construct? Oh, well, did you know that the Navajos have 4 different genders? And do you actually realize what you're saying? We're going to go way back to indigenous American persons. Man, you don't even know where you're going if you get started with talking about indigenous individuals that were here on the continent before we were. But we're going to start. Now, I'm asking you to be sane now. We're going to start using that as our social construct. It's going to be an example. It's going to be your proof. Listen to this.
And not every culture defines gender the same way. For example, in Navajo culture, there are 4 genders.
Red women are women. 4 genders. I just have to hear that again.
Understanding. It's the social construct, and not every culture defines gender the same way. For example, in Navajo culture, there are 4 genders. 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 Navajo culture, there are 4.
Is there any proof of that? Like real proof? I mean, we were actually talking about individuals saying, look, this can do substantial harm to the mental health and well-being. So why don't we go back to the Navajo culture and let's use their social construct. Well, next we'll be going to the Netherlands. It's like every time you want to get something accomplished, you end up going over to the Netherlands and you look at their social construct. Are people dying to get into the Netherlands? I'm saying immigration are they having lots of immigration problems into the Netherlands? I don't think so. Why? America's the place where everybody's trying to be, and you want to try to build our society on a place like the Netherlands? Well, nobody said the Netherlands, Johnny. I know that, but I'm saying, do you see anybody rushing into a Navajo nation and wanting to become a Navajo? Or any of the indigenous Americans, for that matter? Their construct, social construct, ended up bringing about the disaster of their own existence. Why? Because they could not coexist. Why? Because their social construct was such that it would not allow it. Just do I have to go into history and start talking about the behavior of the indigenous individuals that were here and all of the fighting and the wars and the things of that nature that took place in order for us to be where we are today? I will not say that everything we're doing is right and good. We have come so far from the days of General Custer and all that it's just unbelievable the other direction that we've gone. And I'm not saying that Custer was a good person either. I'm just saying the indigenous Americans could not cohabitate with the Americans that were coming into this nation, building the nation at the time. It was not possible. Why? Social construct. Well, you mean to tell me that there weren't any individuals that were immigrants back in those days that picked up the idea of having 4 genders? as a result of their association with the Navajos. They were so overwhelmed with the social construct of the Navajo Nation and how successful they were with their children and their crops or whatever it was that they were accomplishing. And we didn't just kind of chunk some of our stuff and say, you know, hey, they got 4 genders. Let's try that out. I don't think so. I can't even believe that somebody would say such a thing and it be taken as sanity. I'm saying, y'all, this is insanity. But really, what is it about? I'm asking you simply to ask yourself the question. This is really the question that I'm hoping that I can get you to realize. Everybody's in on this. You may be saying, this sounds like some liberal agenda from the Democrats. You think all the doctors in the United States are liberal Democrats? You think the insurance companies are all made of liberal Democrats? Listen, y'all, I don't understand why individuals take everything that's packaged and put out there for you. This is about money, business. This is about jobs. Individuals that didn't have a position can now make a position for themselves because we need to develop a social policy. We also need to form, we actually have need knowledge of the size of the transgender population, and it can inform us on the development of healthcare programs to benefit transgender people, as well as inform insurance companies how to make money. So look at all these people that are lined up, and you're basically building a base here. And who is not involved in this? Okay, let's talk about the peer pressure. Okay, before we go to peer pressure, let's talk about the numbers. .gov, we use data from national surveys to estimate the population size of transgender people in the United States. Estimates of the number of transgender adults significantly increased over the past decade, with a current estimate, best estimate of 390, that'd be adults, per 100,000. That is about 1 in every 250 adults, or almost 1 million Americans. Okay, now watch this. So you had over 1 million Americans in the last census, not the last one, but the one we just had a census. So you're talking about 10 years ago. If there were 1 million back then there is no telling. And you saw the website that I showed you where these kids are getting 1.4 million views. And what'd they get it from? They got it from somebody that didn't even like them. CBN, do you not know who that is? That's the 700 Club, Pat Robertson. They actually were vilified by Pat Robertson's group and whoever owns that station now, CBN, Christian Broadcast Network. They were looked at as weird or whatever, and they got a 1.4 million views. What kid would not like to have 1.4 million views on their social media platform? Let me just go there again. I want you to get a chance to hear how that felt.
You know, everybody knows CBN. They've been a staple, or a steeple, if you will, in our community. Yeah! That's where I get most of my facts. Well, friends, CBN. Do you know any other conservative? The way I found out I was on CBN was because someone shared a Facebook video with me that received, wait for it, not 500,000 views, not 1 million views, but 1.4 million views! How do you feel that your most watched YouTube video has 600,000 views? CBN took my YouTube channel highest stats, spit on them, and we're like, here, this is twice as much, but only from people who think you're icky.
Hey, do you see what's happening right here as well? Not only are you getting 1.4 million views, your highest views ever was 600,000 at the time, which is unbelievable. That's a lot of people. And you're basically seeing that they're not being bullied, they're not being bothered by this. As a matter of fact, they're having a great old time as a result of one of the big social constructs, the religious right, is spitting on them, but giving them all kinds of attention at the same time. Now, let's move back and let's ask ourselves the question, what is going on here? Now, I actually had so much going on right here that I know that you're probably not going to be able to see all of this, but I think I'm going to get most of it in front of you. Of the applicants, peer relationship difficulties. Of the applicants, 57% had been significantly bullied at school, 53% primary school, 45% in secondary school. Of those who had been victims of bullying, 73% had been bullied before they came to think about their gender identity, after starting to think about their gender issues, and 19% both before and after. So before you were thinking about your identity, your gender identity, 73% of these applicants were bullied all through school. So now, is there like anything that should come out of this that we should be seeing? This is a lot of individuals that are putting up with a lot of garbage. And we were talking about peer pressure. You were asking yourselves, why would parents get involved in this? Why would doctors get involved in this? Why will insurance companies get involved with this? Why are lawmakers getting involved in this? Y'all, wouldn't it make more sense to do something about the public school system? I mean, this is a .gov also. And you're getting these stats and you're seeing all of this gender dysphoria. They're having all these problems with their identity, and we're seeing right in front of us that the statistics are showing us that bullying in the public school system is a huge part of this. They think that they're, oh man, look at this. Also, the incarceration rate among transgender individuals is disproportionately high, especially among transgender women, and as such, they may be overrepresented in samples drawn from the inmate population, which represents 20% of the respondents in our analysis. Both aspects may lead to higher population size estimates and may not generalize to U.S. adults as a whole. Man. So now I'm starting to get another picture. I see clearly that the school system is a big problem. That's where the bullying is taking place. And then I start realizing, you know what? The numbers, 20% of the respondents that make up this study are from individuals that are incarcerated. Do you know what incarceration means? That's talking about jail. Man, what in the world? I could just believe people would read this and they would be thinking about some cancer-causing element out there when they're reading the word incarceration. Why are we having these individuals, these transgender individuals, in our study that are in prison? Do you not realize the bullying? Now, I told you last week that there are studies that are basically saying that our public school system is psychologically just exactly like the prison system. You have a lot of people that are in the system, in the prisons, and you have few guards. So what ends up happening? They kind of have to make their own rules and make their own way and figure out a way to get along. Well, in all of your prisons, you're going to basically have a segment that has changed gender, trying to change gender. Why are so many people in prison that are actually trying to act like women? You can't figure that out? Prison is a big bully population. There are lots of bullies in prison. Well, where did they come from? A lot of them came right off of the schoolyard. It's the exact same construct, if you will. It's a lot of kids and a very few custodians, a very few people that are in charge, and they're not really that much in charge. And so what happens? All of these high percentages of bullying that's taking place, who wouldn't want to change their identity? Who wouldn't want to do something to get the attention off of you so that you can go along and live a normal life, or a life where you're not actually being bullied, bothered? And your parents, listen y'all, when we were growing up, I'm just saying this is, I'm not giving you this because I'm saying this is better or worse. I'm just saying parents would go to other parents' home and they would not put up with all of that stuff if the school system wasn't doing something about it. But in today's world, you get all these individuals and you end up changing the entire nation. What did we say? Somebody is going to have to start practicing some sanity, and I really don't think it's going to happen. I fear that we're going to end up being like we're insane, and it's just going to continue to get worse. Can I ask you to do something for me? Tell someone about our YouTube. We are discussing some things on here that you will never see anywhere. You won't have anybody do the research for you that we're doing and be able to see behind the news segment. And I don't listen to none of these folk. I know that all of them have their hands out in politics, in the legislatures, all of that, the doctors, the insurance company, the social construct people. All of these individuals are not trustworthy, and you have to make informed decisions. And the reason why you need to be informed is because you actually might come into contact with somebody that you could help. All you have to remember, Johnny Robertson. That's not really that hard. Type it into Google search or a YouTube search and you're going to have our stuff. You'll be able to see it. Thank you for being with us. This is What Does the Bible Say? Always ask for it. God bless you. Good night.
You're able to come to them or they can come to us.